to give us an introduction.
Hello, everyone from the sunny Caribbean. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay. State law requires when a community adopts a TIF that they hold a public hearing prior to. And so tonight's public hearing is really about two TIFs, because what we're proposing is to amend the existing TIF that's in place for the downtown. And by amending it, we would be taking out 3 buildings. And with that, we would be creating a new TIF by placing those 3 buildings into that new TIF. So this public hearing is really about both actions. And I'm sorry that the article regarding this proposed new TIF prominently mentioned the word Colby, because this proposed TIF has nothing to do with Colby. They didn't request a new TIF. They're not receiving any benefit from the new TIF. It's just, it got that way because the 3 buildings in question are all buildings that Colby is working to improve or build new. The hotel, the former Stern Center next door to City Hall is the second building. And the other buildings, actually 2 of them, are next door to Silver Street Tavern. So that was identified in the title of the TIF as being Colby buildings, which they are, but it has nothing to do with Colby. And so the real reason for taking these buildings out of an existing TIF and placing them in a new one is to be able to extend the time period that we would have to shelter that new value created, which is going to be quite a bit of new valuation, and also capture the taxes. In the current downtown TIF, it has about 15 years left in its lifespan. The proposed TIF would be 30 years, so we'd be gaining an additional 15. And the article in the paper today, I think, correctly portrayed it as that the money from this new TIF would go principally towards paying off the debt for what I think the city is going to want to do, a project in the concourse redesign. And at 1.3 million, I'm assuming at that point, whether it's a year or 2 from now, it would be a bond item with a debt service. And so the taxes from these 3 buildings we're proposing that would be directed towards that debt service. So let me stop there and ask for questions, either members of the public or the council. I know I've spoken to some of you on this, and I'm happy to provide any further details.
So Mike, just to be clear, the new tax revenue that will be generated from these buildings are going to be allocated specifically to these projects. It's not like it's going to be able to be used to actually offset the budget anywhere else if need be at that time.
That's right. It's going to be money dedicated to certain uses within the downtown area. Right.
Eric?
I think there is some flexibility in there, Nick. I mean, we're taking things out of the downtown TIF and putting them in a new TIF district. But I do think you'd still be eligible for the normal things like economic development. I mean, I think the money's going to get eaten up in the things that Mike is talking about. But if for some reason we needed funds for something else, I think there is some flexibility in there.
I just know, I know we want to do this concourse project. The only thing I worry about is we always say, it's going to be great. We're going to get all these new projects. We're going to build the tax base. And then the money's on the horizon and we're immediately dedicating it to something other than, the general fund. You're almost tying your hands later.
I mean, the money has also been earmarked for the money we borrowed already for the build grant. So it's going to help pay down that debt service. Also, it can pay for some portion of the debt service on the new tower truck, possibly on public works equipment related to snow removal, because obviously a lot of that happens in downtown. So I think it will, those are the things that it's meant to be spent on, which of course, in a lot of cases is money we would spend anyway. This just lets us maximize the revenue off of these 3 buildings.
I share the same concerns that you do, Mr. Mayor, about siphoning off money that could be going to the general fund. But I think in this case, where it looks for sure that we're going to have a debt service. It seems like that would have to be paid out of the general fund. It seems like an appropriate use of the money.
Councilor Frankie?
After we are getting ready to hire a new city manager, we have 2 brand new city councilors. We have 3 other city councilors that have only been on the council for a year. We've got a new mayor coming along. It seems to me that maybe we should stop here, step back, take a look, maybe evaluate the entire TIF tax increment financing program and see if it's actually delivered on the promises of economic development that it's made. I quite frankly have more questions than answers about the tax increment financing. And I would like to see those answers before I'd go around, before I start voting to change the way things are set up.
Councilor Klepek, then Councilor Foss.
The way I understand this, it's not the only benefit here is not purely economic development. It's also the impact that it has on the valuation of the city and the tax implications for the county and the state, and then how that translates into revenue sharing and the impact on the public schools. That $18 million building that just got put downtown, that's going to significantly impact the valuation of the city. And should that be reflected in Waterville getting less money for its public schools from the state? I'm not sure about that. That hotel doesn't necessarily sound like that's going to directly translate into an explosion of direct wage wealth in the city. It seems like the TIF is a pretty smart way to protect the city from losses from the state and county.
It's a great point, Tom.
I agree with that. As long as we have things that get spent on that, more like what I don't want is to get tied up on stuff we don't end up needing, and then we have actually less money for the schools. Because that money, because then all of it's to something else. That's my only concern. But if that's not going to be the case, I mean, I'm totally fine with it. They're all good points. Bill. Oh, sorry, Rick Ross, then Bill.
Eric, Council Thomas, is there a reason this is coming now and not say a year from now, given that these buildings, if I understood it right, Mike, were already in a TIF for the next 15 years?
The reason it's coming now is because we can go back a year when it comes to the base valuation. So if we do this now, the original taxable value specifically of where the hotel is basically zero. And we'll collect TIF dollars on the new value. So we'll be capturing tax dollars on the entire new value of the hotel. Whereas if we wait another year, the original assessed value is going to be some portion of a finished product. And so we're not going to have as much increased value to collect tax dollars on. So there is an advantage to doing it now. I initiated this conversation with Mike almost a year ago. And, you know, we're getting it done now. So this is something that, even though it's coming in front of you now, it's been in the works for 7 or 8 months now. And there certainly is a big financial benefit to doing this now as opposed to waiting a year.
Thank you.
And there is, I'm happy to have more in-depth discussions with any counselors who want this explained more to them. I am the chair of the TIF committee. I've been around on the council for 4 or 5 of these. I know they're really, this is as close to a no-brainer as there is. There's no downside for the city, really. I mean, the only risk is the money being earmarked for some new expense as opposed to these things we're talking about. But we've done our best to really spell it out in the TIF program, what we want these funds spent on. Also, if for some reason in the future the city decides it doesn't need all of these TIF dollars coming in every year, they can always amend this in the future to shorten the term, to free up tax dollars for the general fund. So we're not necessarily locked into anything, but there's a lot of benefit and really no downside. And I mean, if there's some downside that people are worried about, please ask that question now so we can explain it to you.
So that,
Bill?
with that email,
Sure. If we do this amendment, how long does it last? Because the proposal is, well, we've got this work we're doing downtown, and this will provide funding to pay for it. Okay, but then once we're done with that work, how many more years thereafter does the TIF last for these new properties?
30 years.
Sorry, I tried to say Mike, I was muted.
30, right, I agree, 30 years. In regards to the timing and Councilor Frankie's concern, and I think Eric knows this, we have until March 31 to do this. But it is, if we're going to do it, it is very, very important to do it before April 1, 2021. So we have time. I think the idea of a workshop dedicated just to the TIF subject matter would be very, very helpful for everyone, because we have almost, I think, 900,000 tied up in TIF monies, and that's a big sum. I mean, that's $1.5 million or $1.25 million on our tax rate. But on the other side of that is the way we've been able to shelter our valuation, like Councillor Klepak mentioned. And so our state revenue sharing, our education subsidy haven't been reduced because our valuation has been sheltered. And our county tax has also been not increased as a result of our valuation going up. So there are some very important points to doing it, but we have a lot of money tied up. People should understand what that total is and where it goes. And I'd be happy to do that before we, before the end of the year.
Well, and I would say the vast majority of that money is being spent on things that we would be otherwise doing anyway. We're just funding it through TIFs rather than through general fund, which allows us to maximize our tax revenue.
You're right. You're right on that. Yes. We can certainly continue this discussion when we get to the items on the agenda too.
did you say we have tied up in the TIF money?
It's over 800,000. And I probably, when we get to the agenda item, I'll let Doug that number out by then, Patty. Oh, wait, I can tell you right now, it's 830,000.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Are there any other questions from anybody on the TIF? Councilor Green.
I don't have a question, but I did receive a comment from a community member who was concerned that that somehow this is, as Mike Roy pointed out, involved with Colby and a break on taxes. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to reiterate that this project does not involve any loss of income from Colby, which will be paying taxes on the properties. So that is not at issue here.
And in fact, it will increase the amount of revenue that we get from these buildings over time. we will get, it always depends on what the revenue sharing formula is, but we get anywhere from 30 to 40% more revenue out of the same property by putting it in a TIF district.
Yeah, I would echo Mike's idea that some sort of a workshop, certainly making sure that people in the community who are concerned about this are getting the right information and the right conception of what is certainly a little bit of a difficult issue. Yeah, I think if the right messaging goes out to the community about what is actually happening here, then people will see the logic of it.
We might even have some stuff on that, Mike. I don't know. You might check with Sarah. I feel like we did that once, a while back, where it went through explaining the difference between TIF and credit enhancement agreement and those different pieces. So we might already have some stuff put together. You might just check.
Yeah, we did that with the 2 buildings across from the dorm on Main Street. I think we had a hearing where we tried to really explain how TIFs worked.
And you're right, Nick, I updated that with Sarah just yesterday.
Nice.
Yep, so I can tell you that we have 11 existing TIFs in the city of Waterville. Now, the airport TIF expires just a year from now, but we're talking about adding a new one now. So we've got 11 currently, and that's looks like what we'll have a year from now.
Can I ask one question? Remind me what the projected size of the TIF is in dollars?
It's hard to say at this point until the assessor makes his valuation determination on those 3 buildings in question. Hotel is, getting close to being complete, so he will assess that soon. But the other buildings, the other 2 buildings, are nowhere near complete. So it's hard to answer that, Tom, at this point until Paul, our assessor, finishes his valuation, his assessment.
And the other question on the heels of that one would be, in the absence of a bond issue and debt service on a bond for the concourse, how much buffer is there in the budget to absorb that TIF money? Those expenditures that are in the budget that could be covered by the TIF in the absence of that debt service. You don't need to give an answer right now, but that's some math that I'm thinking of there.
Yeah, that's the kind of thing we could explore if we have a workshop.
Councilor Green?
It sounds to me that going ahead with this TIF is actually a way of financing the projects that we are planning to do. Is that a fair
and projects we're already committed to?
Yeah. Okay.
I certainly agree with Councilor Thomas that there's really no downside. It helps to finance it, and it maximizes the taxes we collect. I think, as he said also, in that we won't be losing any of our revenues as a result of our value going up, because the value is not going to go up. It's going to be sheltered.
Yeah, Mr. Bovia.
I know from previous workshop that the TIFs have a CEA that's attached to them. So is taking the buildings that are not in the TIF now and putting them in the TIF are going to give them the same kind of tax return benefit? Or are we going to still be capturing the same amount? Because right now, when they're not in the TIF, we would be capturing 100% of the taxes. Putting them in the TIF, will that then decrease the amount of taxes that we'll be getting from them? We know that the valuation will increase, but we've done the calculation to see if the valuation increase is going to result in us capturing less taxes than if we put the building into the TIF.
No, we're not going to be, we are capturing 100%, but there are not going to be any credit enhancement agreements, no tax reimbursements to Colby whatsoever on any of those 3.
Also, these buildings are already in the downtown TIF. So just so everyone knows, these are already in a TIF district. What we're doing is putting them into their own TIF district, because if we don't, we're going to lose 30 to 45% of the revenue 15 years from now. So we're leaving the buildings downtown that have already seen substantial development are generating lots of TIF dollars in the downtown TIF. So we're leaving those in the TIF, because if we moved them out, we'd have to start over again with their valuation. What we're doing is identifying these 3 buildings that are going to see a huge amount of investment. And we're saying we should start over with these 3 buildings because we're going to get the most bang for our buck by starting a TIF now and collecting that revenue for the next 30 years. So this actually generates more after the 15-year mark. We'll be collecting 30, we'll be netting 30 to 40% more revenue from these buildings than we would if we just left them in the downtown TIF and let it expire 15 years from now. So we're getting more revenue by doing this.
Thank you.
Anybody else before we conclude this hearing? Seeing as nobody, is everybody okay if we just move on into the regularly scheduled meeting? Okay, great. We are going to start the regularly scheduled meeting of the Waterville City Council. I don't see Rick's flag in the background, but I would be remiss if I didn't call to order our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States
of America,
to the republic
for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty, justice
for all.
I promise to have my flag next week, our next meeting.
And councilors, I will probably sign off because the purpose of my being here tonight was for the executive session. So.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
Okay. I'll talk to you all later. Thank you.
First up is disclosure of conflict of interest. Is there anybody in the meeting tonight who feels they will have a conflict of interest with any votes that they will take this evening? Seeing as none, approval of the consent agenda. Could I get a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Patty, roll call, please.
Councilor Morris,
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira,
Yes.
Councilor Klepak,
Yes.
Councilor Green,
Yes.
Councilor Foss,
Yes.
Councilor Frankie,
Yes.
Councilor Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
I would make a motion to take the entire agenda by title only.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Councilor Morris,
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira,
Yes.
Councilor Klepak,
Yes.
Councilor Green,
Yes.
Councilor Foss,
Yes.
Councilor Frankie,
Yes.
Councilor Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Unfinished business, order 249-2020.
An order providing for sale of lot in Airport Road subdivision.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Is there any discussion? I'll have a roll call, please.
Councilor Morris,
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira,
Yes.
Councilor Klepak,
Yep.
Councilor Green,
Yes.
Councilor Foss,
Yes.
Councilor Frankie,
Yes.
Councilor Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you.
Next is ordinance 258-2020.
An ordinance providing for amendment to zoning.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion. Yes, sir. I see Randy with the hand up.
Yes. My name is Randy Butler, and I'm with Derigo Engineering, and I apologize for not making it to your last meeting regarding this item. The primary reason for this is to avoid some wetland area and to provide additional buffer for the property. The The property already has a right-of-way out to West River Road that we can go through. It's a 66 foot wide right-of-way that provides adequate width. But the problem is there's about 150 feet of wetland that we would have to go through. I'm sure we could make that happen by the proper permitting, but by allowing us to shift that road about 100 feet to the south allows us to go through a much narrower piece of wetland. And it also would be cutting through a field instead of a wooded area. And that wooded area currently provides some visual screening for the neighbors from seeing Village Green. So that's the primary reasons for making this change. And one of the things we are open to is we don't necessarily need to rezone the entire parcel. We can rezone just about 100-foot strip would be adequate for us if that makes a difference in anybody's decisions.
Yeah, I think from my recollection, everybody felt pretty good about it the first time through.
Okay.
We sent it over to the planning board. Is there any questions, Councilor Kleepak?
Randy, could you just tell me, you made general statements, and I've seen the map, but it's hard to tell from the map how much wetlands would be, specifically how much wetlands are going to be impacted in either instance.
If we keep it in the existing right-of-way, it would be an area of approximately 150 by 60 wide. But if we move it, that is reduced to about a third of that, be roughly 50 feet by 150 by 60 roughly. So you're talking 9,000 square feet in the original right-of-way versus about 3,000 square feet in the reduced, if we were able to shift that road. So it'd be a significant amount of wetlands that would be saved there.
And this has some sort of, I drive past that all the time, but I haven't walked there. That has some sort of first order stream that drains eventually into the Mesolonsky or something going through those wetlands, or what is that?
Yeah, there's a small stream. It's just couple of feet wide, not a large stream. So we'd be crossing that in either location. We're crossing that stream, but it comes essentially where we're trying to move it to would be more at a right angle as opposed to the original right of way. The stream kind of comes at quite a skew. So we'd be disrupting, upwards of 100 feet of the stream as opposed to, 60 feet of the stream if we're able to come through this revised location.
And so either way, it's going to be culvertized?
That's correct.
Any other questions? All right, Patty, I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Kleepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Great. Thank you guys for being here for that.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Next up, I have Order 259/2020.
Order providing for acceptance of a FEMA reimbursement.
Move to adopt.
Second.
And discussion. If there's none, I'll ask for a roll call.
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
We lost you, Patty.
We lost Patty.
Your voice.
If you're talking to me, my answer is yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Next is a resolution 260/2020.
A resolution providing for hiring a consultant to advise the city on solar energy issues.
Move to adopt.
Second. We were going to move to table this, right, Mike?
Yes, I'm proposing that we do that at this time. I think that it would be best for us to step back a step or two and talk to other consultants, and so that we all gain a better understanding of just what it is we're talking about. Also involve the solar committee in that process. But I was hoping to get 2 volunteers from the council, and Councilor Frankie, Councilor Green have agreed to do that, for us to meet with some of the staff, to meet with them and begin researching what a consultant could do for us, what are the key issues for us to address, and so on. So may not move as quickly as I hoped, but I think it's the right course.
So do you just want it tabled indefinitely or to a certain date?
Well, if we table, no, I guess if we postpone indefinitely, it's automatically killed, right, Patty?
Correct.
So tabling indefinitely doesn't automatically kill it. That would probably be the best thing.
Okay,
Chairman,
I'll
do that.
make that motion.
I'll second it.
Yeah, can I get a roll call? Patty?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Councilor Olivera,
Yes.
Councilor Klepak.
Yep.
Councilor Green,
Yes.
Councilor Foss,
Yes.
Councilor Frankie,
Yes.
Councilor Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
So with the 2 counselors, 3 of us on staff will meet to interview 2 or possibly 3 of the consultants, then go to the solar committee with our recommendation to them to get them involved in understanding where we're at, and then return to the council. So it would be in January, I would guess.
Mike, is this something that could affect the next budget?
In terms of what we pay for electricity, yes, possibly.
So, I mean, I just don't want the timeline to be dragged out so much that if there's going to be some benefit that we could get this year, I don't want it kicked down the road, you know, and end up costing us money because we dragged our feet.
Right, that's one concern, the budget. The other concern is how long is the net energy billing credit program going to last at the state level? It's been a very, very expensive program, and some people are concerned that it may be ended prematurely. I think we heard that 2 weeks ago from the consultant that was on with us. But I think, well, to answer your question, we're going to work as quickly as we can to get something back to the council.
Councilor Frankie?
Well, just to address your concerns, Eric, the project we're thinking about buying electricity from has yet to be built. So we will be looking at the 21-22 budget, but it won't affect us this year.
Okay, we're going to move on to new business, resolution 268-2020.
Providing for vacation land skydiving office lease.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Randy, is this why you're here?
One of the reasons, yes.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
I assume this is just delaying what we tried to do last year since he wasn't able to open.
In part, that's correct. We had already, via a different council resolution, moved the lease that we were doing supposed to be this year to next year. This lease will be completely new that we're discussing tonight to allow them several extra months just in office space so that they can kind of gear up and get things ready for the season, which I am, just so we're clear, totally in favor of.
Okay. Anybody else? Seeing as none, Patty, I will ask for a roll call, please.
Councilor Morris,
Yes.
Councilor Olivera,
Yes.
She has a hard time. She gets to my name, but yes.
Councilor Green,
Yes.
Councilor Foss,
Yes.
Councilor Frankie,
Yes.
Councilor Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Next is Resolution 269, 2020.
A resolution providing for acceptance of bid for airport specialty service utility vehicle.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, we can have a roll call.
Counselor Morris,
Yes.
Counselor Oliveira,
Yes.
Counselor Klepak,
Yep.
Counselor Green,
yes,
Counselor Foss,
Yes.
Counselor Frankie,
Yes.
Counselor Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Next up, Ordinance 270, 2020.
Ordinance providing for amendment to zoning.
Move to adopt.
Second.
And discussion. Counselor Frankie.
Well, I think we're moving a little too quick on the skating rink. The planning board has already identified and asked us for a change from wetlands protected zoning to industrial zoning, and I'm not sure we've really got a good explanation for that. We're haven't looked at all of the different possibilities for where to put a skating rink. We haven't addressed issues of accessibility. What the cost is, what the affordability. I just think we should wait a little bit before we get some public input and see what people actually want in terms of a skating rink, where they want a skating rink, and answer a few questions. So I would make a motion to table this until we can have this kind of discussion.
Counselor Klepak.
Is there a second on the motion first before we discuss more?
Oh, there was. Patty, was there a second?
I didn't hear a second.
Is there a second on the motion? Guess not.
So, can I be recognized?
If there's not a second, we're not even discussing it.
Got it.
Well, he motioned to table, so we're still discussing the item. We're just not tabling it.
Claude motioned.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't realize that was an official motion there. Okay. All right. So yes, Councilor Klepak.
As a person that values wetlands and green spaces, I would not consider lightly building over a green space, but I would say in this instance that I want to learn more, but in general, I'm in favor of putting the rink there. I think in terms of the access to green space, there is those open soccer fields that are quite close. So it's not like we're limiting access to that. There's also the hill that's adjacent to the AYC that kids can sled down. And in terms of, limiting nutrient inputs, there is a drainage culvert right there at the end of that field. There's a drainage culvert that goes into the stream, but it's coming off of a large lawn, and grass is very shallow rooted. It's not really taking up a huge amount of nitrogen. In fact, a lawn can be a point source of, depending on how it's managed, it can be a point source of pollution into the water. And if in the reconstruction, if it's done correctly, it could even mitigate some of the inputs into the stream at that area. The the trees, there's like three or four white pines there. While it's always sad to lose a white pine, a tree, white pines are fast growing trees themselves. And I am pretty compelled by the AYC's argument that the proximity to the building is going to facilitate usage for them. They're not going to have to figure out the logistics of schlepping kids around to get them from the building next door into that ice skating rink. I also think that that part of that North Street complex there could benefit from a pathway that connects the Riverwalk to the sidewalk on North Street there, and certainly that can be a part of the plan that's built in. There is proximal parking there that is going to be seasonally empty in winter, and there's not a lot of winter infrastructure at North Street there's a lot of summer activities for families and kids, but there's not a lot of winter stuff there. So I do want to learn more about the project, but in general, I actually think it's a pretty good idea myself. So I just wanted to share my thoughts on it.
Councilor Oliveira?
Yes. Yes, and I do agree with Councilor Flipak with what he's saying. With we did have I do have a constituent. Her name is Anna Thomas. She has a lot of questions regarding, like, for instance, I think one of her questions is like about the green space and about like the walking path. And I do agree that this needs a public hearing. Like, the public needs to have input on what they want to see happen to, like, how do they want that structure to be? Like, what's the things that they would like to see put in, like a sidebar or something to that nature. But I do feel like the public do need to hear more about this. And there's a lot of questions, and they need to be answers.
Mike Roy.
We don't certainly have any problem with having a more public discussion about it. This is a first vote. So what I would hope would happen between now and December 15th for the second vote is that we advertise the fact there's a council meeting on the 15th and to discuss the project. People very happy to contact us if people would like a separate meeting. And I know you know, Councilor Oliveira, we had a separate meeting with Anna Thomas over at the Alphon Youth Center to address her concerns. She was at the planning board meeting. She also talked about those concerns. We addressed them then. But if other people have questions too about the change, we're certainly willing to meet with anyone at any time to talk about that. I think what Councilor Kleback said is very important, is that that whole area has a lot of summer activity, but very, very limited in the winter. This would give an important winter activity a place to be.
Councilor Thomas?
I would echo what Mike said. This fills a need in this community. It's something that we're sorely lacking. And certainly, community rinks have been a big part of Waterville's history in the past. So it'd be nice to have a place. I certainly trust the AYC. They're one of the most reputable organizations in the area. And their entire mission is providing access to kids who otherwise wouldn't have access to these kinds of facilities. So I'm not really worried about affordability. And then I would remind people that this is going to have many more steps before anything actually gets built. It's going to go back in front of the planning board and have a site plan review, and that'll be the time to comment on, where sidewalks should be and how parking lots should be situated and all that stuff. Really we're at the 5,000 foot level right now, just sort of approving the idea of this project and rezoning so that they can move forward and start actually drawing out plans and going through that public process.
Okay. Anybody else? Patty, I will take a roll call, please.
We lost your audio again, Patty.
I don't know why.
Keeps going.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Oliveira,
Yes.
Counselor Klepak,
Yes.
Counselor Green,
Yes. Can I add anything at this point or no, just a straight vote?
Just straight
I
vote.
did. Okay.
Counselor Foss,
Yes.
Counselor Frankie,
No.
Counselor Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
And this will have to be discussed again too, so if anyone didn't get to say something.
Councilor Green, if you can go ahead and add something if you want.
Okay. What I just wanted to ask that there be an opportunity for some kind of public hearing, comment, other input, as was suggested before the second vote, just in case there are other things we haven't heard that we do need to hear before we vote again.
Great, thank you. Next is Ordinance 271, 2020.
Providing for amendment to the zoning ordinance.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion. Counselor Foss.
Mike, am I understanding that this is going to limit, get my notes right here, residential rentals down to Res B?
I'm sorry, I'm not as familiar with it, maybe as I should be. I believe it's for residential B and not for residential A, but maybe someone else can help me. Well, we do have a planning board member here, Samantha Burdick. She could help.
Thank you for being here.
Thanks, Sam.
Thank
Yeah. So it eliminates the possibility of having any short-term rentals in residential A, which is actually pretty much in line with the way the ordinance is written now, because you can't run a business out of a residential A zone. So that's why we eliminated it from there. Everywhere else, you can have them, but you do need to register them with the city clerk's office and pay a licensing fee.
Thank you.
Anybody? Counselor Frankie.
Oh, I'm afraid I haven't done all of my homework, but how does this treatment of short-term rentals differ from the bed and breakfasts, the regulations for bed and breakfasts?
Is it okay for me to go again, Nick?
Yeah, please, absolutely.
Okay, so basically it's the exact same requirements as a bed and breakfast. We didn't feel that it was fair to charge bed and breakfast a licensing fee and not charge other short-term rentals. The exclusion is for owner-occupied residences. So if someone is renting out a room, say, in their home for an Airbnb, they wouldn't need to pay the fee because presumably there would be less issues if they're at their home. But what we want to make sure is that people aren't just buying up residential properties in the city and renting them out as Airbnbs all over the city rather than allowing residents to live there.
Thank you for clarifying that for.
Anybody else? All right, Patty, I'll ask for a roll call, please.
Counselor Morris,
Yes.
Counselor Oliveira,
Yes.
Counselor Klepak,
Yep.
Counselor Green,
Yes.
Counselor Foss,
Yes.
Counselor Frankie,
Yes.
Counselor Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Next up is Ordinance 272, 2020.
An ordinance providing for amendment to the zoning ordinance.
Move to adopt.
Second.
And discussion. Counselor Klepak?
I had taken some time here and looked at the ordinances for Augusta, Fairfield, and I tried Oakland, but I couldn't find anything for Oakland that specifically pertained to this. And I had spoken to Councilor Green, who I think has some information about Portland. None of those other municipalities have any explicit language about that I could find about the square footage of a parcel that dictated whether people could have chickens on them or not. And I don't know the history of the current ordinance here in Waterville, why that was set at 10,000. And I'd love to hear some more from anybody who does know the history of that a little bit more. But
here for that.
We just picked it out of thin air. There were a lot of people worried about what would happen with people raising chickens, so we set a limit with the idea that we would see what happened, and if there weren't any issues, then we could look at lowering that number. That was the entire thought process at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, because I can see. I'm assuming that the concern was the smaller the lot. There's always a risk when you are allowing kind of like barnyard animals into residential zones, but if someone's not taking care of it, the neighbors are probably a lot more likely to be disturbed by it when you're packed tightly together, as opposed to parcels that are farther apart, I'd imagine.
No, I understand that. I mean, I've experienced it. We had chickens in our own backyard here. We had 5 chickens, and we had them for many years. We haven't had them now for 3 years. But certainly in the summertime, it would be a little bit potent, the smell coming off of our compost bin if you were just in the right windfall of that. And it seems that the regulations that the city has are smart. I question. So another question I have that I would love someone to answer for me is it at all possible to craft language? Maybe this is a pipe dream, but where you keep the 10,000 hard cap, where you can above 10,000 square feet, you keep your 6 chickens with the appropriate setback, no problem. Below that, there's some buffer, maybe down to 8,000, I don't know, 7,000 something. That it is with the mutual consent of all parties on adjacent lots. Is that, that way it gives people, when you are kind of getting into their space with your, their proximity with your chickens, that they have some ability to say, I don't really want that, or yeah, sure, I'll take a dozen eggs and let you have some chickens there. I don't know. Is that not how it works? It's my good neighbor clause.
I don't think that would be possible. I could be wrong. I don't know how we'd write that in, especially because neighbors can change. Maybe you limit the number of chickens down. I don't know.
Yeah, well, oh, please, Rebecca, go ahead.
Well, so you referenced my name, and I will say I don't really have any other information other than what I heard from the planning board or read in the minutes. But since Sam's here, I mean, I'd like to hear more about this difference between 10,000 and 8,000. I understand the 8,000 proposal, which is what the planning board recommended, was based on current practice in Portland and potentially other communities.
Yeah, so the 8,000 was actually proposed by Jay. The thought being that it's not as much the square footage that's the issue, it's the being able to meet the buffer. So we're fine with people being 8,000 square feet as long as they can meet the buffers. that's what we thought was the most important in order to protect neighbors. I will say that we looked at a couple different things. Honestly, it seems like our ordinance is working pretty well. And then as far as like what Tom had mentioned about the good neighbor clause, really the only time this becomes an issue is if one of the neighbors has a problem. So that's sort of like already in effect. I'm sure there are people throughout the city that don't meet the current 10,000 square feet, but their neighbors don't care. So I think that that's worth mentioning as well. It's kind of how it is working, although not necessarily following the ordinance.
I get, so the 8,000 is just another arbitrary number. Like, I mean, there's no research, just an looks like there it is, 8,000, and let's just open it up again, and we'll look at this again. Or like, why did the planning board deem 8,000 be okay?
So again, it was Jay that had suggested that, and I believe the suggestion came from talking to a constituent and seeing kind of the layout of their coop, and they were like over 9,000 square feet, but slightly under the 10, and really concerned that they were going to lose their chickens, but they were able to meet all of the setbacks. So, and none of their neighbors had a problem, and it seemed like they could meet all of the setbacks within that 8,000 square feet, which is why that number was chosen.
But I guess I don't understand if regardless of the square footage size, if you can meet all of the setback requirements and, you know, the sanitation requirements, why would it matter what square footage you have, and not just simply, you know, okay, we're going to open it up to, you know, whatever the square footage is. And if you don't meet the setbacks, then it is what it is. But if you're able to meet it and you follow through these other things, then, you know, have your chickens and eat your eggs. I don't know. Like, I guess I don't understand why we just make these cutoffs and we say, okay, well, this one person had a concern that they weren't going to be able to have their chickens. So let's bring it down to appease them. But somebody at another square footage is like, well, I want to get chickens and I can't have them, even though I might hit the setbacks. And I don't understand why we would include one and exclude the other if we don't just simply manage to the setbacks. And then at that point, if it becomes an issue, then that's why we hire a guy, like, right, code enforcement, like they go in and just be like, hey, this place stinks, you're not taking care of it, like you need to clean it up per the ordinance, or, you know, you lose that. And I guess I'm just trying to understand, you know, that thought process.
Yeah, I guess that's for you guys to decide if you want to amend our recommendation to take out that part. Personally, I think that the setbacks is the most important part. If I don't choose to have chickens, then I shouldn't have to have them like right next to my backyard. So I guess that's really up to you. I think the 8,000 was meant to be a bit of a compromise, just kind of making the ordinance fit a wider portion of the city, but also still providing protection for neighbors. So
I see Councilor Thomas, then Foss.
So I emailed the code enforcement officer about this, and I asked him, I was wondering if you can tell me how many people have actually pulled a permit to raise chickens in Waterville. Also, any sense of how many there may be that don't have a permit, what types of complaints do we get, and how many each month? And Dan said, I've actually only issued one chicken permit this fiscal year. Issued one last year, 0 in 2018, and 3 in 2017. He said, this year alone, I've received 5 requests that were denied because of size limitation or inability to meet the setback requirements. He's also received complaints from 8 different locations with chickens that couldn't meet the requirements. 5 of those have since gotten rid of their chickens. There were 3 who were waiting to see what the council does. So, I mean, right now we only have one person in the city legally raising chickens. Phil can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe if we moved it down to even the minimum lot size, which is 5,000 square feet, we bring another 1,000 lots into the equation that could possibly get chickens. Law of averages, I mean, what is maybe 1% of those people going to actually do it? So you're talking about maybe 10 people. So just to keep some perspective about what we're talking about, I mean, even if we went as loose as we possibly could with this thing, I think you're probably talking about no more than a couple dozen people who are going to actually do this in the city. And I mean, I'll let anyone else chime in, and then we should probably hear from Phil at some point.
Is there anybody else before we let Phil speak? Phil, you're up.
Thank you. So I'm sure everybody's aware this actually came about because I got some chickens and then found out about the ordinance. Like I'm sure so many people are finding out now that we're here in the city when the ordinance was passed in 2012. And we went to the planning board, and like Samantha mentioned, the recommendation that was made, the recommendation wasn't actually made with any kind of, data points that actually justify 8,000 square foot or 10,000. I've been doing the research, I think, I don't remember who said, the reason why they recommended 8,000 because they went and they saw that for that particular constituent, that one constituent, the 8,000 square foot worked, right? So, and that can be said about many. That can be said about my chicken coop. I invited, the entire planning board and the council. I mean, I didn't see anybody from the council come over and check out the coop to see if 5,000 square foot actually works as far as setup. And if anybody came, they would have seen that a 5,000 square foot with the setback that I have actually does work. A lot of the concerns that are being put forward here are sanitary concerns, which basically would fall into the realm of the code enforcement officer. Where if somebody would not be able to meet the sanitary requirements, then the code enforcement officer will be able to come in and remove the chickens and have them, get rid of their chicken coop. When we were on the planning board, it was discussed very thoroughly that the size of the lot or the proximity to the neighbor does not determine if that particular coop would create issues. It's the upkeep of the chicken coop. So whether your chicken coop is 100 feet away from your neighbor or 50 feet away or 10 feet away from your neighbor, if that chicken coop is not properly taken care of, that's where we run into issues. And if there are those kind of issues, we would then bring the code enforcement officer. Hopefully that would resolve that problem. Bringing the reason why I asked, and I spoke to many counselors, to bring back the size of the lots to 5,000 is because that's the smallest buildable lot size in the city of Waterville, right? You cannot build on a lot that's less than 5,000 square foot. Bringing that down to 5,000 would, like Councilor Thomas mentioned, bring an additional 1,006 lot into the mix. Bringing it to 8,000 would only bring an additional 274 lots and leaving out 732 lots from people who could potentially have chickens. And if we go by the law of average, like Councilor Thomas mentioned, of a 1,000, you might be looking at another 10 people. As far as setback, like Councilor Claypack mentioned, other cities don't have land requirements. Some have setback requirement. I like to use the city of Portland, which is the largest city, a lot more people, population a lot more tight in. They have a 10-foot requirement from the next building. And I called down in the city of Portland, spoke with the code enforcement officers, and they don't have issues with, pests and odors and things. They're tightly packed in down there in Portland. So that, again, and I looked everywhere I could find. There's no historical data that shows that, proximity from another building, whether 10 feet, 5 feet, or 15 feet, has created issues. We're basically restricting people on something that, we haven't seen issue arise from, and that we can actually check and see if that actually creates problem. Because we have some people who do have chicken coops in the community who don't meet the setback requirement, they don't meet the lot size requirement. And we haven't heard that many complain. Most time people complain. The reason why people will complain is because we have an ordinance and they see that the ordinance is not met by the neighbors. If the ordinance was met by the neighbors, I am pretty sure about 50% or maybe more of those complaints would not come about, because the reason why people complain and say, well, they don't meet the setback. If the setback was 10 feet or 5 feet, then therefore the neighbor would not have any reason to complain. I'm not that to say that when a neighbor complains about something that is sanitary, that should be absolutely taken into consideration. We don't want sanitary issues all over the community. So therefore, I believe that like many of the other communities that have been doing this, we should do away with, the land requirement, or at least open it up to the entire city, up to the smallest buildable size lot, which is 5,000 square foot, and make those setback work for those and open it up to the city, and then put in place sanitary requirements that will make it so if there are issues with any neighbors, we can then bring in the person that we have hired as a city, as a code enforcement officer, to resolve these issues. And that, I believe, would make it fair for the people of the city, for the majority of people of the city who are now, and a lot of the people who have been left out because of the current requirement, and who would be left out if this ordinance is adopted as it is written.
Any questions or comments?
No, I mean, I think at this time, I am okay with the reduction in the square foot from the recommended 8,000 to 5,000. At this point right now, I don't have any desire to change the setbacks, just to, give that buffer to the people, in those areas at this time. I don't see a need to make that change, but I'm certainly all for, lowering this to the 5,000.
Was that a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion that we amend number 4.3.31.c from 8,000 to 5,000.
It's currently at 10,000, right? Oh, I see. I'm sorry. Pardon me.
Is there a second? Is that a second, Eric?
Yes, I second. Sorry.
Okay. Discussion on this amendment.
What is the current setback? I'm sorry.
15. What we're voting on tonight is to take it from 10,000 to 8,000.
Yeah, no,
so that's the vote. The 10,000 is whatever it is today. The recommendation is 8,000.
No. I know the square footage. I was asking what the setback was.
I believe it's 15 feet from the property line and 20 feet from any structure.
Correct. Nearest residence, it says. That doesn't say structure, but yeah, the nearest residence, so the home, not a garage or things.
Right.
Councilor Green, did you have something?
Well, I just wanted to clarify. So the motion is to reduce the current footage from 10,000 to 5,000.
Yes.
Right.
Or 10,000 to 8,000. 10,000 to 5,000.
It's to amend what's in front of you from, instead of going to 8,000, go to 5,000.
Okay. And the setbacks would remain in place.
Correct.
Okay.
Any discussion?
I would simply, I guess I should travel to Mr. Bafia's land, but I'm just doing the math here. If you have a 10-foot setback from the property and 15 from any house, and the coop is between your house and the property line, that's 25 feet. And we're going down to 5,000 square feet, and a lot to be buildable has to have 100 feet of frontage. Is that correct? So a lot can only be 50 feet deep. If that house was built on the curb of the street, it couldn't be more than 25 feet deep. In my mind, is the math right there?
I think it is. Yeah, I don't know how these setbacks get hit.
Yeah.
Phil.
Yeah, the setback requirement, if you're bringing it down to 5,000 square foot and you kept the setback, which I know in 15 and 20, it would be pretty difficult for somebody to be able to have a chicken coop, because that basically would put that in the middle of their like living room or like their backyard or something. So that's where I'm hoping that the council will consider going with the 10-foot, setback from the nearest building, because again, I would have hoped that people would have came and checked out my chicken coop, because that would be able to show people that, the concern that are being raised by folks over the setback can be met. And those kind of setback limitation, whereas about 10 feet away and lower, are also implemented in other communities. Portland has a 10-foot setback. And the reason why they put that, I'm sure they had a reason. And I don't think that they went 10 feet because they thought, well, that would create issues. And I believe that the city of Waterville, we have a little more space in our community, and a 10-foot buffer works. It works for a 5,000 square foot lot. And we have an actual case study where we can go and actually check and see if it would work or not. And if we did that, we would be able to make a decision based on factual data, not just based on, we believe that it would work. We believe that it should be 15 or 20 or 30 feet, and not look at something that is tangible and that's in front of us before we make a decision. So I will hope that the council will consider going with 10 feet away from the nearest structure, because I know that it works. I have the case study to show and prove that it works. And I hope that, with that 10 feet setback, we would put in place some really strong sanitary requirements to make sure that neighbors are protected. And therefore, if there are any issues in terms of sanitary issues, those sanitary restrictions that we will put into the ordinance will make sure that our code enforcement officer could address them.
Samantha.
Thank you. So I just want to advocate on behalf of Danielle Bragg, who actually is the person that brought this concern to the planning board. I'm not sure if you all received the letter from her, but we did on the planning board. And I just want to kind of note a couple things. So the chicken coop, she did send us some pictures. So the chicken coop that we're talking about is very close to her home and very close to her property line. It's almost directly outside of one of her bedroom windows. And so that's kind of the concern here, right? And I know that there was the chicken ordinance writing group or committee or whatever it was back in 2012, and it didn't happen haphazardly. They did look into a lot of the humane requirements for chickens, the square footage of a chicken coop and how to raise them humanely. They looked into, like Councilor Klepak had said earlier about the smell that can permeate. I mean, chickens defecate many, many, many times a day. Typically, if they're laying, there can sometimes be squawking, and chicken squawks can go over 20 feet or something like that I had read. Danielle had sent us a bunch of resources as well. So I just want to caution you to lowering the setbacks. I think that they're very important. They help to protect neighbors from the nuisance, especially if we're looking at lowering the lot size. I think that it's really important. And like Phil said, on a lot size of 5,000 square feet, it's impossible basically to meet the setbacks. So I think that's kind of the point. And I hate to see just I feel like at the planning board, we always seem to get into this pattern of a neighbor raises a concern and then we have to change an ordinance to fit a neighbor, rather than having people follow the rules as they were written, or maybe advocate for the rules to be changed before they're in a situation where they've changed the rules. So I do want to just say that we had a lot of discussion on this matter at the planning board. We have heard from different residents about it. We have looked at other ordinances. We looked at how ours was written, and I would just really caution you to either keep things the way they are or accept the change that I made. And if you do go down to the 5,000 square feet, please keep the setbacks the way they are, at least for now, so that we can make sure that neighbors have some sort of protection. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I have no desire to, like I said, to change the amendment that I made. So if at this point, if that's what's on the table, so.
So the vote now is going to be on the amendment from 8,000 to 5,000. Patty, can I get a roll call on that?
Yes. Council Morris?
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira?
No.
Councilor Klepak?
Yes.
Councilor Green?
No.
Councilor Foss?
No.
Councilor Frankie?
No.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 3 in favor and 4 opposed, so it fails.
All right. I would like to now ask for a vote on the original ordinance before you with the 8,000 feet. Patty, can I get a roll call on that?
Yes. Councilor Morris?
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira?
Yes.
Councilor Klepak?
Yes.
Councilor Green?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
No.
Councilor Frankie?
No.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
Vote is 5 in favor and 2 opposed.
Okay, moving on to resolution 273, 2020.
A resolution providing for referral to the planning board.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Councilor Morris?
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira?
Yes.
Councilor Klepak?
Yes.
Councilor Green?
Yes.
Councilor Foss?
Yes.
Councilor Frankie?
Yes.
Councilor Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Next is order 274, 2020.
Approving 5th Amendment to Downtown TIF District and related development program.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Councilor Frankie.
I'd like to move that we table this until we can have a fuller discussion of TIFs. We talked about it some at the public hearing earlier this evening, but it seems to me that there were more questions raised than answers given.
Is there a second?
Oh.
Councilor Green, was that a second on Claude's motion?
It wasn't. I wanted to, I haven't had the orientation yet. So can I ask a question now, or do we have to vote first?
Just we have to see if there's a second on this motion to talk about it.
Okay.
Seeing as none, now we're Councilor Green. Now we're open to talk about the TIF.
Okay. Well, my question was what Councilor Frankie's concerns are at this point about the TIFs.
Oh, as I raised in the public hearing that we had prior to the meeting, I think that the whole idea of TIFs needs to be explained to the to the residents of Waterville so they understand what we're doing. Some on the council appear to think that these are magic solutions to financing and economic development. Others, like myself, would like to see what the evidence is that there is economic development based on the TIFs. And also, it's been raised that somehow this is a magic way for us to get more revenue sharing from the state. I'd like to see that explained to the residents so they know why we keep raising the property taxes on residential property. There's just a whole series of questions that I'd like to see answered. Eric Thomas has said that you can always come to him and talk about TIFs, but I quite frankly think it's the requirement is to explain to the public why we're doing the tax increment financing and why it appears to be the magic answer for every problem.
Councillor Thomas.
Well, one, this is a public forum right here, so if people have questions, they should ask questions. Two, every time we've done one of these TIFs over the many times that I've been on the council, we've done workshops to explain them to the public. This is not the first time this has come up. We did this just a year and a half ago. We did a big workshop to explain the last amendment to the downtown TIF. And nobody's saying this is a magic solution. What I'm saying is this is a tool that the state has given us in order to optimize our revenue, and we're foolish not to take advantage of it. There is no downside to what we're about to do with this TIF. If somebody thinks there is a downside, tell me what that downside is.
Is there anybody else who has something they'd like to add? All right, Patty, can I get a roll call on this, please?
Councilor Morris,
Yes.
Vera,
Yes.
Councilor Klepak,
Yep.
Councilor Green,
Yes.
Councilor Foss,
Yes.
Councilor Frankie,
No.
Councilor Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Next is Order 275, 2020.
Approving tax increment financing district, Colby Main Street properties and related development plan.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Eric.
I just want to remind people that this takes 2 votes. So if we want to have a broader discussion, and also if there's a conversation councilors want to have so that they know the information to go into the public discussion, Mike and I am sure are happy to sit down and discuss this in further detail. The mayor is pretty familiar with how TIFs work, so I'm sure he could help explain this to people as well. But we could have those discussions between now and the next meeting so that when you come into that meeting, you can either ask further questions or offer explanation to questions you might have gotten from your constituents. So we will have to vote on this at least one more time. Tonight just moves it to the next meeting. I know we have a new city manager coming in, but I really would like to see the wheels in motion on this. Like, this is just the beginning. We need to get it voted on, and then it has to be submitted to the state for approval as well. And I think it would help with Mike's experience dealing with these things. It would help to get that ball rolling before we have somebody new come on board. But again, we'll have a chance to discuss this again at the next meeting.
Rick Foss.
Mayor, Mike Roy and I had an extensive conversation today to Councilor Frankie's point of educating yourself, like Councilor Thomas had talked about. When I stepped into this specific TIF, I was of the notion that we were giving away the world and all that. And Mike Roy brought me completely up to speed. The only snag that him and I had talked about was it said Colby on it. Okay. So Mike does a very good job. Not that Councillor Thomas doesn't. I just haven't had that conversation with him. But you know, Mr. Roy brings that right around for you in very easy terms. This was a no-brainer for me. You know, we weren't giving money back to Colby. This is a win for the downtown and keeping those tax dollars here instead of sending them off to Kennebec in the state. So that's all I got to say about that.
Okay. Seeing there's no one else, Patty, can I get a roll call, please?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Oliveira,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
No.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 6 in favor and 1 opposed.
Next is Resolution 276-2020.
A resolution providing for bid award for build grant Main Street project.
Move to adopt.
Second.
And discussion.
If I could give a brief introduction, certainly this bid award is something that was very, very much welcomed by those of us that have been on the planning side, because the construction budget was estimated at 9.4. Fortunately, we got 2 bids under that budgeted amount of 9.4 million, both of them in the 9.2, 9.3 range. We're recommending the low bid submitted by Crooker and Sons, and conversations with the Maine Department of Transportation and their experiences with Crooker and Sons, we believe they have every bit of the capability they need to do this job and to do it well. And with us tonight is Ernie Martin with the Maine Department of Transportation. In the event you have any questions of him, while we do have him present, I do want to say how grateful the City of Waterville is with what Ernie and his staff have done, really, and it's been in the last 15 months of design work, public hearings that they've held, which some of you have attended, and many, many, many meetings to try to finalize all of the details of this project. The construction is 9.2, 9.4. The total project is 11.2. So this is a very big project. Certainly one the City of Waterville could not have done without DOT's help. And Ernie and his people are experts in this, and we're very grateful for the help that we've gotten from them. And we'll continue to get, because let's face it, this is really just the first step. So I don't want to go on too long. I'm happy to answer any questions. I have an updated project schedule and project budget, which I meant to get out to you earlier today, but I will do it first thing tomorrow. Actually, I have it on my screen. I could bring it up. It's one that you've already seen. We updated it a little bit, but let me see if there are questions.
Councilor Frankie, then Klepak.
What's the disbursement schedule for the project? Are there certain completion dates that have to be met before portions of the contract are expended?
Yes, that schedule, some of that is answered in the schedule that I have that I will send out for you. We don't expect to be spending any money really until March. So people want to know when things is really going to start to get serious. Construction wise, it'll be in the spring, March, April. And so once a contractor gets working, then it's usually a monthly requisition expenditure schedule, Claude, kind of thing. And that, of course, will get help with DOT in coordinating that.
Councilor Klepak.
Hey, Mike, where might I have seen a comparable job completed by Crooker?
Well, I know that Ernie is listening in. He may be able to help me out a little bit. Ah, there you are. All right. So I haven't been on any other projects, Ernie, with Crooker because they're in Topsom area, but your experience?
Yeah, they've done a lot of the downtown work in Brunswick, Topsom area, because that's obviously where their base is, Topsom. They've done typical projects in that area, but they don't get too far out of that area. They're moving north a little bit. We haven't seen their list of subcontractors yet. Obviously, they're waiting on tonight. On moving forward would be that Mike would send them what we call a letter of intent to award to them. So they then would send that back. As Mike mentioned, based off the schedule, right now there's kind of a lull as the contract is written. No work shall begin till March 15th of 21. Which I think was kind of beneficial in the pricing that Mike had talked about previously, which I think everybody that has been involved with this project is ecstatic that you guys got the bids that you did, which is great. So recently we haven't really worked with Crooker, but in the past history, they've done a lot of work in Topsom, Brunswick to really answer your question.
I'm on their website now, so if anyone wants to go check out their website. Looks like they've been in business since 1935.
Councilor Green?
Were there other reasons other than the cost of the bid for choosing Crooker over other bidders?
No, with any federal project, state project, where this is a locally administered project by the city of Waterville, because of the federal funds, you have to go through a low bid process. There were 5 bidders that put bids in on this: Crooker, Ranger,
McGee
did,
New Earth.
Yeah, Maine Earth, and Pratt and Sons. So those are the 5 bidders. They're all quality, all reputable. So you got 5 quality bids from 5 quality companies.
Councilor Frankie?
Just one other question, Mike. Where do we stand in terms of paying for this project? Have we received money from the state, from Colby, or from the federal government yet?
Not yet. We've set up our dedicated account. So the money that the city is contributing, the 1 million from the bond issue, has gone into that dedicated account. We talked with Colby yesterday about getting their share to us this week, because once we sign, or we can't actually sign the contract with Crooker and Sons until we know the funding is there. The bill grant funding is certainly there. We're not going to get that money up front. We're going to get reimbursed as we go, but we'll have DOT's money and Colby's money and ours in the bank and ready to start covering expenses come March. Ernie, you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, the money's all in place from the federal bill grant, which is $7.24 million. Then DOT has $1,375,000. Obviously, the city of Waterville has $1 million, and then Colby has, I think, $1.575 million involved with the project. But essentially, it's there. I think, Claude, you had a question about the payment process. Basically, once construction begins, there's going to be monthly submissions from the contractor for reimbursement for services. So that'll be like every 2 to 4 weeks. There'll be bills coming into the city, and then the city will turn around and pay those, and then the city will ask for reimbursement from the state and the federal government on their portions.
It will take a good amount of cash management work at that time to coordinate that. So it will put a strain on the city's administrative staff, but we've been meeting with the Department of Transportation personnel, and you're still going to arrange a meeting, Ernie, with your finance people and our finance people so that we make sure we know the steps to take through this. But we're ready to go forward.
But what's the anticipated finish date for this entire, when will the whole thing be done?
Well, we hope by November 22, Ernie?
Correct.
Technically, by the terms of the bill grant, we actually have until 2024, I think. But no one wants to see it stretch out that long by any means, not by any means. People went through a lot this summer with the water and sewer line work. We got through that. The good thing is with this construction project, I think they won't be up racing against the clock quite as much, but we don't want to extend it any more than it needs to be either.
Patty, what is going on in your office?
Got some flashing lights.
Some flashing lights.
Tom?
I got a note from a constituent here, an email from a constituent. It says, I don't think it directly pertains to the vote we're going to take, but it is this issue, I think. It's hard to figure out if the sidewalk connecting downtown to the south end is accessible or not. There's nothing blocking the sidewalk off right now, though there are fences that could be put up and have been before. But there's equipment and supplies along the sidewalk, and sometimes workers are walking in hard hats. Can the city construction company put up a clearly delineated sign, either indicating where to walk or closing the sidewalk altogether with a detour indicated? Otherwise, people are walking through a construction site or walking on the other side of the bollards blindly in Main Street traffic.
That's all yours, Ernie.
Yeah, as part of the contract, the contractor is going to have to supply obviously a schedule of work. Obviously, part of that is a safety control plan, which they're going to have signs up saying sidewalk closed. On each end, there's going to be pedestrian fences. There's going to be chain link fences that are going to protect pedestrians from construction workers. If any of you had a chance to get down into Hollowell when we were constructing that, that's kind of a pattern that you're going to see here in downtown Waterville. We do have to protect the pedestrians, and also we have to make everything accessible to the businesses, for the pedestrians making their way through town as well. I did want to say, as part of the process that we laid out in the contract, is prior to any work being done, the contractor themselves are going to have an open public hearing somewhere to be obviously in the downtown, where the public, business owners, property owners, anyone that wants to come take a look at what the contractor schedule looks like, they will have that there so they can see when are you going to be in front of my house. So they'll have a rough idea. It's not laid in concrete. Obviously, we know how construction works. Mother Nature gets in the way with a storm or et cetera, things shift. Also, as part of the contract, there's going to be biweekly updates that the contractor is going to give to the city, and the city will post that every 2 weeks. It'll update the public on where they're going to be working, along with, the sidewalk disconnects, where can people go or where can't they go? Those will all be documents that'll be available and posted on the city's website.
Anybody else? All right, Patty, can I get a roll call, please?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you all. And Ernie, thank you for signing in tonight. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks, Ernie. Counselor updates. Are there any counselor updates? Next is community notes. If there's anybody from the community that has anything they would like to say that was not on the agenda tonight, now would be the time to do so. Checking my email. Tom already read the email that we had, which was related to the last thing.
Mayor, I might mention that we're in the process of filling vacancies on various boards and committees. If any member of the public is interested in serving on a committee, they can submit an application. We have links on the website, and we also have applications available in the city clerk's office.
Thank you. Manager's report.
At this point in time, I don't have a whole lot to report to you. I certainly will have a more complete update on all of our projects at your next council meeting. But for right now, I think I'm good, unless there are questions of me.
Nope. I think we're good. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Great. Thanks. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.